Joey can't be here tonight, and neither can Roger Sunday, so we're down 2 counselors, but we've got more than we had last time.
You say we're moving up every
You're
time.
right,
Moving
we're
up.
getting more people.
Yeah.
Attrition's
But
taking
yeah, the
its
budget, we may
course.
have a full crew.
Flu season gets over.
For those who weren't here last time, I just want to remind everybody that when we get into some of the specific departments, try not to talk about positions and names. There are 6 positions that we're making recommendations to be eliminated. And we just want to be sensitive to the people. I don't know if it's clear who they are yet, and it doesn't really matter. It should be about the money, not about the positions, unless you feel that we're not providing the service level that you think we should be.
Are you saying that because we're starting on the town manager?
Yes, we are. But there's nobody losing jobs in that department, I know.
That's it, we're not done yet, right?
I'll be the first to know, hopefully.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Okay, the only changes here are, one is you'll see that we have put in again 1.75% increase to employees. There's been an adjustment in the administrative assistant's position because of job duty changes and other responsibilities that she's taken on. Also, in the professional development is contrary to what people may think, I'm not giving myself a $5,500 raise in my professional development. This is for our assistant to take some classes. It's something that is offered through some of the unions and other areas, so I have put that in there.
Now, are you in a position, or are these people in a position where they have to, I'll give you an example. I was in the medical field and I had continuing education credits that I had to require in order to hold down my position.
No, these are not.
So these are all voluntary.
These are all volunteer.
Increase my personal value.
This person is doing a paralegal program, which I think will benefit all of us. She deals with legal counsel quite often, and
So it's job
paralegal.
related things, not
It's
personal.
job related, absolutely.
But it's not a requirement.
It's not a requirement, no. But we all benefit from it, not just her. So I'll continue to be an advocate for professional development because I think, one, employees gain from it, but also the town benefits tremendously for just keeping up to date on their field and gaining more knowledge and bringing it back in here. Otherwise, there are really no other changes in my budget on this particular. It stays the same. Any questions on that?
In the administrative salary, the increase of 24% is related to adjustment in job duties. Can you elaborate on what those adjustments are?
Yeah, that individual took on more responsibility in assisting the economic development director. They also have taken on responsibilities of doing some of the health care administration that comes into the office, along with insurance claims that come into the office. So things like that were initially part of that job description.
Still based on a 40-hour work week?
Still based on a 40-hour work week. Anytime she puts in any comp time or any overtime, it's usually taken in comp time. So there's no other adjustments there.
You get a 24% raise.
And if you look at the salary survey that you were all provided, she was one of the positions that was severely underpaid for her position as well, so.
And she is doing the duties of like almost a assistant manager rather than just an executive
Well,
secretary, which is what she.
She's more of an executive secretary, but there's a lot of inequities, and we're going to be discussing this throughout the budget in some of the departments, and we're trying to make adjustments a little bit at a time to have the impact less. But you have employees who are coming into this, union employees who are coming in to as a starting position, making more money than somebody of her responsibility and of her background. And that's very frustrating when you see these types of inequities. You're going to see those kind of inequities if you took the time to read the salary survey that we did when I first got here, and we also accompanied in the most recent data from Maine Municipal Association, because they do a salary survey every year. of all the towns. We submit that data.
So are you forced into hiring a union employee rather than a non-union employee?
No, it has nothing to do with it. The question again is,
Are you forced into hiring a union employee? You said a union employee is coming in at a greater rate of pay than somebody who's been here that's apparently a non-union employee.
yes.
So are you forced into hiring union people?
No, I'm not, no,
Regular
I'm
people?
not, for that position, that's a non-union position as administrator. There's several of those throughout the town. Darla, Air, at Public Works, any of the administrative assistants are non-union. And,
So where are the inequities coming in? How does that translate back to the
well,
union?
okay, if you're coming into the starting position, okay, say in the front counter, okay, and your starting pay is $14 an hour, okay? Because that's,
Very good pay of me.
yep, it's, and your starting pay at, in my office is $12. It was less than $12 when she first started. So those kind of inequities. And you try to give people
Well,
a fair wage.
one has to face the public and one doesn't have to face the public. There's a value in that.
No,
They both
they
do.
both.
They both have value, and they both deal with the public.
Why is one 12 and one 14 then?
Excuse me?
Why is one 12 and one is
That's the
14?
inequity.
That's what he's saying.
Inequities
But the
between,
union
Well,
forced
instead
out
of
one
hiring the
position
14, why
above
don't you
the
hire it at 12?
other. Because the union won't allow you to hire those.
My point exactly.
Those positions
So you're
are-
forced into hiring a union person? Yes or no?
in certain areas of this.
Depending on what position they take.
Why?
because-
Because if they're front
Because we have a
office
union.
clerks, like out
Why
front,
are you forced into hiring union people?
that's
Because
how
it's a
law
union
works in the
shop.
state.
yeah, it's a union
See, there
shop.
goes the state thing, and then we go to the Fed thing. All right.
Any other questions on this budget?
Supplies
Different
went up
numbers,
quite a bit,
what
because of the extra stuff you're having to mail out.
Yeah, we've had more requests for mailing this past year. You can see the actual for 2010 was $763. So we have bumped it up. Any other questions on this budget? Okay, let's move on to this town buildings.
Which is what?
140.
Find it first.
Back
I think purple tab on the right-hand side.
There.
These tabs keep falling out.
Oh, wait a minute, you don't have
Mine's
purple
pink.
ones either.
No, I don't.
Yeah, they're not on color cards. They're all-
You have
Have
the
two.
form.
Anyway, again here, the wages in this particular department are the cleaning person we have, who has done a great job, and we looked at trying to consolidate with the school, but the schools people wouldn't have time to come here and do our building, and so it was something that we just didn't feel would work. The only other changes that you'll see are, we have combined some of the, like the natural gas expenditures and things like that. We've
Is that why those-
consolidated it all into one department.
Is that why all those increases in those?
Yes.
So will we end up
Reflective
seeing a
of-
decrease in electricity and natural gas and
Yep, well, between the Public Works Department and Transfer Station and the like departments.
just a question on the electricity? Have you looked at whether or not the cost would be cheaper if you had a different service provider?
On the electricity?
Because you have different options. It
Yeah,
still
we
seemed
we
peanuts
actually
and-
have contracted some of ours with Constellation Energy and another one with Galaxy. And we, every year when their contracts come up, we look at who's competitive. Initially, we had some contracts that ended, that weren't, some areas that weren't under contract. We went with Galaxy at the time because they were a better rate. When Constellation came back and their contracts were expiring, they came in with even a better rate.
And same thing with natural gas?
Natural gas, we only have one provider, Unitel, and they're locked into them. They're the only ones that have the gas line in this area. Okay.
Just changed.
Did it?
We did, at my work. We
With
had
who?
Unitil. You didn't ask me that. It's right on the tip of my tongue. I'll get the information for you, but we just changed to them.
As far as I know, the gas line that comes out through here is owned, or it's not owned, but it's distributed to Unitil.
Yeah. I'll get you some
Yeah,
information.
that'd be
just
good.
to see. Yeah.
Because we are looking at possibly expanding the line up Main Street and possibly to Brunswick Housing and MTM.
Yes.
That's something I said we weren't going to do last year, but something surfaced today, as a matter of fact, that we may be able to, we're going to sit down with them again.
The question, not that this is directly related to that, but remember last week we talked about the natural gas and what would, you said you were going to talk to them about what you would have to do to get the municipal.
They gave me a cost of about 125,000, somewhere in that vicinity, and they would expect us to pick up part of that cost. They've been talking with Brunswick Housing Authority, so we're looking at some alternatives to getting it done at no cost to us. So it's in the early development.
What, no, the part about, when I was, beyond that, when I was saying, you know.
Individual homes, right?
Individual homes, what could we do in the future to,
Well, I think if we ran the line up the street and stubbed it, and then when we started to do any kind of road work, we could actually expand it, or if you have a number of people who are
Yeah,
willing to
exactly.
sign on,
right,
you'd have to do a survey, and even then, I would bet that they'd want it under contract before they expand the
Yeah.
lines.
well, it's like a
You gotta show them
television
a
cable,
profit,
yeah.
Back to the cleaning service for a second. Is that a town employee or is that a contractor, subcontractor?
It's a town employee. But he only is in here part-time.
Steve, on the heat and oil, that the $10,000 is basically what, it went out to bids. Did we actually get a bid back that we actually accepted, or?
No, we rejected those bids because the school, we had put it out jointly with the school department, and prior to, when we opened the bids, they had actually heard that night that they were going to put in natural gas. They had been waiting on Unitil to get back to them, and they happened to get back to them that afternoon. We opened those bids at, I think, 2 o'clock or something.
So the bids actually, because of the amount?
They're null and void, and we're going to rebid them.
You're gonna rebid them? Now, the $10,000 is just not a roughly, I mean, you went up 25% thinking that it was gonna be.
Yeah, I think the prices went up to, from 285 possibly to 375, so it went up substantially for what our first round of bids was.
No.
Pretty substantial increase.
I know this is actually, I mean, year-to-date, I mean, isn't that like a bulk price that we do initially, or is that year-to-date is actually what's been delivered so far? I mean, how does that actually work when you actually deal with the oil for year-to-date costs? Like the
Is that in
16.2, is that,
Mhm.
Well, that's a snapshot of where we are when
so
this
that's
was
what's been
printed,
delivered so far to the buildings?
and what we have in our system for having paid.
Haven't paid. Any idea, I mean, this kind of goes off a little bit, but with the, two things I haven't heard this year is one, is water coming in the building, so I assume the project worked last year when we re-insulated the roof.
Yes.
All right, because we've had a lot of snow this year, and I haven't seen any puddles yet, so, and no one said anything, I wasn't gonna say anything till winter was almost gone,
That
because.
seems to
Jinx
work.
yourself.
Okay, so I assume that, I mean, since the snow's melted off the roof, we didn't have any water at work.
That's right.
Have we seen any energy savings from this building yet?
I haven't really looked at it yet.
I'd just be kind of curious,
Yeah.
because
We
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 did.
can look at the number of, what we've used for therms and at the end of the season. We can definitely.
It'd just be nice to know, and same thing with Public Works, I mean, it would be nice to show that.
If you ask staff, it hasn't made a
Natural gas,
difference,
yeah.
because they're always cold in here, so.
Yeah.
It is.
It'd just be nice to know, I mean, the money we're investing into here, and even though it was a grant of
I
Public
don't know.
Works, I mean, if we can
I think
actually
it
show
is.
there was a dollar savings at the end, I mean, I'd only assume if if enough heat isn't leaking out of the roof to make the water leak and melt in, that it's actually staying in the building, I would
Yeah,
hope, you know what I mean,
yep.
so.
I would think so.
This building is natural gas here, right?
Yes.
Another question, that water damage that's in the ceiling in the corner behind Jess's, yeah, Jess's desk. Drawing a blank. Jody's desk, thank you. Is that old water damage?
That's old water damage, yeah. We have to replace the tile.
I heard Steve saying anything about water leakage this
Well,
year, so I
you're right, but I just
assumed
wanted to say that in there too.
Not in this building.
Now
Yeah.
that you brought it up, I had to ask.
Not in this
Good.
building.
That's
The
a good
increase in
thing.
telephone, same thing, you've consolidated Public Works transfer station on
Everybody's
one.
on this, yes.
So really, when we're looking at these increases, because the lines have been eliminated in the other departments, we won't see anything there,
Right.
up or down.
In the other departments, you'll see a decrease in their departments. It's a shift between
Okay.
the individual departments to the town building. it's a wash
Okay.
between.
One thing that I want to mention that I noticed that we didn't have a summary sheet in the beginning of this book that we did in last year's. Last year we had these, and it gives you a good summary of all the
Yeah, you
departments together.
We do.
Let's see it in here.
Somebody should have them.
I don't have it.
Summary?
Somewhere there's
Is
one.
it somewhere?
It wasn't right in the beginning, but it was. but-
Was it a hand,
I thought it was a handbag.
This one?
It might have been
Yeah, this,
handed out.
yeah.
That one?
Yep.
Yeah, I don't see that one.
It wasn't actually in the packet.
It was stuck in the beginning
I
of
can make
the,
copies before we leave tonight.
Okay.
So I know if I'm going to do it.
whatever that first section is.
Yeah.
That extra?
Couple
Yeah.
copies, I didn't get one.
Always get copies. I don't have one on me.
Three?
Thought I did, yeah.
I haven't got any either.
Oh, no, I don't.
Make it even 10.
Okay, any other questions on town buildings? Let's move on to assessing.
Yeah.
Okay, this-
Assessing. Yes,
Assessing.
yes, got it.
Page 11.
This particular budget has some changes. One, there is no director manager in this department. That line has been taken out. The deputy assessing clerk is now full-time, or she was only part-time, but she's here 40 hours, actually 37 and a half according to her time sheet. And then if you look and see contracted services, that's what Mr. Van Tynen's group said they would work for the year, just staying in the office and continuing to work on some of the problems we've had there. So the only person you have there full-time is the deputy clerk.
So contracted, that's not bad. That's
Stay with that.
no social security, no benefits.
Right.
Liability
Just the
insurance,
contracted
no workman's comp.
Where does the deputy clerk actually fit into that suite? What is the dollar figure for her come in?
It's under the 2012 manager, second row down. Showing up as 1.35% increase on you.
Okay, I get you. I thought that she's not under contracted services, is she?
No, she isn't.
No,
She's under
she's-
wages.
she's-
Contracted is the first one, okay, I get you.
Yeah, yeah.
It just goes down. I get you. I seen it listed in the middle there. It doesn't
Oh,
show which
yeah, they
line it
can
was
get
going
kinda
to. Yeah.
confusing.
Any questions on that? It's really pretty straightforward. Most of
And
it's
that's-
supplies.
And that's gonna stay that way all year?
Oh.
All
down
year.
here.
Oh, down
Okay.
bottom, okay.
Contract
Yep.
expenses.
Let's discuss that as a
Yeah,
council.
sorry, that note was
Make sure
the
we're all
same.
okay with that.
Excuse me?
There's no
We need to discuss that as a
direct
council to
pay,
make sure
which
that
is
we're all on
really-
board with
Yeah,
that.
when you, after we go through your preliminary stuff and you have
When I see contracted
comments
services up there.
you want to make about this, make your comments. So we discuss it now, that's what these meetings are for. So you ask questions, hopefully, and we will hopefully have answers for you. So once the council is all together as a group and you want to start discussing where you think you might like to make some changes, you will have some input from each other, okay?
That contracted service, Steve, is that actually for the same level of staff that he has now?
Yes.
With that one person being here, what? It's
Maybe
2
it's
days-
2 days a week, I don't know, if he's here, it depends on what they have.
2 days a week, and then actually Bill being.
Sometimes it's 1 day a week, you know.
And Bill actually being available when necessary.
Yeah, well, Bill's here, he's been here 1 day a week, off and on, so he's here quite a bit lately.
But when we start hearing the assessment reviews, are they gonna be, one of them gonna be actually active in that?
The abatements?
Abatements? Well,
Yeah,
actually,
they're actually, the Board of Assessment Review will only meet when there's a denial of an abatement.
okay.
And that group is meeting at the end of this month, and they have a request before them that Bill denied, and he will defend his denial to them, and,
That falls under this dollar figure he's given us?
yes.
Him being there for those?
Yep.
Okay, that'd be just be important, because those maybe, I mean, 1 or 2 isn't bad, but if you start doing
Quite a few.
quite a few, I mean, that could, if you're higher, someone comes back, that'd be pretty expensive.
Yeah. No,
Hopefully we don't, but I mean, it's a possibility.
Yeah. Hopefully we don't have many. Otherwise, a lot of reductions in the postage and things like that. The budget's down 16% compared to what it has been, so. Any questions? Okay. Town clerk. Excuse me? Thank you.
Steve, just staying on that one just a minute. If we do get funding for the
That's above and beyond.
reevaluation, will these, I mean, that $40,000 is still a figure that you would actually be using to keep staff
Right.
while that process is going
Continue
on?
to, yeah, while he's, because if he does a reval, my expectation is that we'll have more people out in the field
What number?
doing the work.
Oh, I got it. I got it.
And they'll maintain the level of service that they're providing to us in here.
Just at that point, it may be, I would only foresee more questions. You mean?
Oh, yeah, most definitely, if we get that far.
Yeah, exactly, but.
Okay, town clerk, again, a 1.75 increase in staff. And an increase in printing since we, year-to-date, we were at 35, but initial request, we increased it. Professional services, 8,000, down. And
2011, when we had the two school budget elections.
okay,
43.
Oh, got it.
We had an additional election in that year.
let's hope we don't have any elections coming up above and beyond our normal ones.
Hmm.
Well, that's kind of going to be my question here. On the 2010, we had an actual extra election. We came in under budget there. We don't have anything foreseen in the future, and yet we're going to go from a budget of 45 to 55. Why is
Where are
that?
you?
I mean, 2010, right?
2010.
2010, yep.
We still have an election to go in June. And we budgeted for this special election, we just have to use it for recalls for the bond referendum. So it should
Yeah.
work out.
In addition to just in addition to the ballots, you also have the binding of the meeting minutes, and the cost of those expenses go up as well. So it's more than just the ballots.
Twyla, do all the
What's that?
people that help
So I know
you
what my
do
recommendation
they
would
get
be.
some type of
They get
stipend?
paid.
Everyone gets paid, yeah. Or it's a rule that by state statute, you have to
51.12.
pay them minimum wage. for election
Okay.
purposes.
Yep.
Any update yet on what's gonna happen with those voting machines? Because I know in years past we've talked about the voting machines and the possibility.
The state still hasn't decided what they're going to do. I don't-
Expect a decision sometime in June or July. So we have set aside some funds for
That's what I was
purchasing.
gonna ask. Thank you.
So what is the $1,000 increase there? What's the, trying to understand what's the reason for that?
In which line?
In
Same thing I was
the
asking.
printing of ballots that you already brought up?
Do you want to answer that?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have not, we don't have any really good binders for our birth records since 1999. And so we've been storing them in these cheap little $3 notebooks, and they are falling apart left and right and bending, and the quality of the paper is getting chewed out because of that. So I went out to explore the possibilities through my contacts through the New England Association. I was lucky enough to find 2 people who supply those kinds of books now, because McBee Binding doesn't do that anymore. And the last estimate we had was about $90 a book, and we need 11, so, and then plus shipping, so it'll be an extra 1,000.
Okay.
And then I'll bring our books from, up from 99 to about 2010.
They should take a tour and they'd understand. The ball was really interesting to me last year.
We like-
Very, very interesting. You do a good job with it too, Twyla.
Thank you.
I thought you liked the water
treatment.
purification, sewage
Oh,
treatment
she
plant
loved
better.
That was my favorite. You notice I didn't go this year.
Somebody else didn't want to go either.
Couldn't handle that. Lori? Lori, do you want to go?
Stop it.
Lori and I were in that together last year.
I'd already been through the whole
You're
thing.
just trying to tell me that was just plain old condensation.
It was not, no, it wasn't. It smelled.
Despite what they say about
We had
things
two
rolling
of
downhill,
them,
I'm
the
convinced.
condensation of this.
Any other questions on the town clerk's budget?
The difference in the contracted services was, you probably already mentioned it, but there was a reduction in contracted services.
Town clerk?
It's just,
Town clerk, or was that, I must have been looking at the wrong line. I'm doing that tonight. pretty
No,
badly.
you're- you're looking at it.
No, there's actually
hopefully we
27.
don't have as many elections.
$450.
So that, the
That was
contracted
the-
service is basically the deduction in the elections. Is
Right.
that-
Yes.
What we had decided to do, because Marie Hale is now available, she's not working full-time somewhere else, and as long as we can snag her, she'll set up the polls for us, instead of, paying Public Works extra to do the setting up, she can come around and for a little bit cheaper, we can save around 400 or 450, in fact, if we do some of the setup ourselves, by paying one person as opposed to Public Works to come out and do it. Materials, and she will put it out for us, so kind of show a little bit of it. It's minus there, a little bit plus somewhere else, so.
Oh, 700.
Probably just the rounding,
What?
yeah.
Next one.
So the biggest difference in that is the 1.75 and the idea of the difference in the idea of updating some of our printing material inside the
That's
vault.
the, yeah.
You would never thought we'd run out of room that fall, but I tell you, it is getting pretty oily now.
Scary.
Yeah.
Okay, no other questions on this? Let's move
There it is.
on
Oh, That's what you
to
said. Okay.
economic development.
700. All the way down.
Yellow, yours is yellow.
Yes.
It's most people's fault, it isn't.
I think they all are on this one who's unfortunate. We're such creatures of habit.
You have fancy binders, we're just sort of,
Look.
Okay.
Split it last year.
she'll charge you.
We can reuse it again.
Oh, that's true.
Times are
I
hard.
have an updated sheet in mind. In this particular budget, everybody, there's going to be some changes here. We had looked at taking money out of the RFP account at $68.50 to reduce that salary. We are not going to do that this year because of the fact that the TIF changes that we made just recently. This whole budget will be coming out of the general fund. It will not be part of that. It will be funded by the TIF change that we made. And that will also occur with AvCog funding, and it will also occur with MOXIE funding. So the TIF that we are able to capture is going to go into a separate account from the regular operating general fund. So just so you know that.
So all of economic development,
All of economic development.
$58,000?
Yeah, the revenue will not come out of the,
When you add back the 6,800.
Yeah, okay.
so that, that 5,500 is what the current wages are, and we need to bump that up by 1.75.
How does that
This
affect
was
the
an
Moxie Day
off-
fund?
Excuse me?
How does that affect the Moxie Day fund?
That comes out of our operating budget, so
Right, but, I mean, if we, just as an example, if we normally spend $10,000 on Moxie Day, do we not only get to spend $5,000 now because we're budgeting the
no,
economic
we've
development?
always budgeted 2,500 for Moxie Day, and it will still be funded at the same level.
But it's gonna just. it's
Just comes
gonna
out of a
come
different pot of money.
What it is, the TIF, it goes into the TIF, and the only thing that we can use that money for out of the TIF is for economic development of anything.
And
Moxie is
related.
one of- and
That's our
related.
biggest day of the year.
Yeah, and,
Yeah.
so his salary, the way the whole thing runs will come out of that. And basically, he found a way to,
He found one.
he found a way to do all of this without costing the town.
And if the council wanted to appropriate more funding for that, they could appropriate more funding for Moxie Day if they chose to. Because it would come out of that TIF fund, so.
Moxie is pretty much, yes, the town does donate $2,500, but Moxie is pretty self-sufficient to this
Yeah,
point.
yeah.
We have a very huge expense this year because we need to do something with our electrical, excuse me. A company that did it in town for us is not doing that any longer. So the money that we do have in the fund, a huge chunk of that will be coming out to work on the electrical. So if the town felt led, we could definitely use more money.
Yeah.
It's my Moxie voice now.
Going off subject, who's going to be running that? Any idea? Since, oh,
Just
okay.
say,
Many volunteers.
Yes.
Chief Gallipo's
you are.
involved, Twyla's involved. I
I'm the
mean,
parade director.
Are you really?
so it's a lot of volunteers. It's a good group. They work really hard, so. Otherwise, really no other changes in that particular budget.
so basically the whole budget as a whole, the only increase would be the 1.75.
Yes. Yep.
There is,
We get a bang for our buck, huh?
the difference in the cell phones is,
Different phone, different plan.
different phone, different plan.
Yeah.
And we're gonna see that across the board on some of the other ones also, because we had mentioned that last year, that we had questioned it a little bit, whether or
Yeah.
not that was
We
compatible
didn't so
across.
much look at other phones. This was, with the switch of Director Scott brought in his own
Service that he
service
uses.
and so.
So just multiply the 48.9 by
1.7.
I assume that you don't have a big bag with an antenna 4 feet
Calculator?
long, so it must work okay, right?
So far.
So, okay, good, yeah.
Any questions on
The
that?
first Motorola Flip that I bought was like $600.
It was a flipper, right? It was
Yeah, in the
battery
bag.
you drag behind you.
That's when it first got small. The bricks, man, they were.
The 5-watt bricks.
$70 a month, you can call anybody, you can call Japan every time you turn around. There's technology,
Those are good for cabins out in the woods.
Okay, technology.
Which one is that?
I don't know, I'm just looking at my game.
Didn't look real well.
200, 300? 01, 135, over here.
It's up front, up
Yeah,
top.
near the front.
I think you did this to keep us awake,
What's that?
bounce around, different tabs.
Oh, good. Still have more
There
data.
you go.
Yeah, he could have put numbers there, but no.
Right? Everybody got it? Okay, technology. Again, there's been some changes here. We had a full-time person on staff. We no longer have that person, and you'll see a bit of an increase in contracted services. We are actually farming that out at this particular point in time to a company that we've been under contract with for other services, but they're taking on more of a role, and it's still less than having a full-time person here with benefits and all that.
So that replaces our tech guy.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It's not bad.
But there are limitations to that, though.
There are
I mean,
limitations.
You can't just ask him to do everything.
Yeah.
No, it's kind of like, if you had a bad refrigerator, if you had someone stand in your kitchen and fix it, when it breaks, that's great, but when it breaks, you gotta call the service guy and try to figure out and try to fix it with stuff you don't actually have.
So where's the contract?
I mean,
Cooler in the
there's-
ice out, yeah.
It's one of those things where on paper it looks good, at the end of the day, we're probably not really.
Service and stuff.
We actually
Yeah,
have,
but, I mean, for the size that we are.
but the problem is
That's
not
AMS.
just-
Microsystem.
it's like,
Advanced microsystem.
Have you,
communications,
have you
dispatch.
tried to do
I mean,
anything
basically that person took care of all of that
with the
stuff.
school
So it
department?
isn't just the idea of.
Hey,
All
you-
tech advising.
We
Exactly.
we have talked about doing that. They have one person
Yeah, I know.
And the problem
who handles over, I don't know, probably over 300 different computers, and he's extremely busy. They were hoping that we could help them.
I think it's a short term
We
fix, not a long.
chose not to go that route.
Well, that's the way
contracted
things are
out for now.
trending.
Yeah.
Contrary,
When you're
I'll
20
be
years
quite
old,
frank, the technology
you
committee
want cheaper
would like to see a full-time
Yeah.
person
But
here.
now the way things are.
We're gonna
actually-
wait this out and see how it
Gave her an
works.
example that day, I put a new vanity top in.
And if
it.
we
He's
feel
an
the
animal
need,
son of a
we'll
bitch.
come back possibly and do something else. But right now, it's, we have a good
New
relationship.
connecting line.
So much of it is
If I call a plumber,
managed
it's gonna be at
remotely,
least 250 plus
but
bucks.
in
And that kind of goes.
we
to
have
my-
had Nick Knowlton, one of the principals at AMS, on site quite
Maybe it
often
was just
when we
something
need
that's
help
wrong there.
and or need anything,
Well, I
so,
was just, because I know the school department does have one, that's all.
yeah.
Yeah, but everybody knows.
I know he was there, because my nephew has to go in once in a while, my great
I would
nephew
like.
has to go in and help him out once in a while.
Yeah, he's pretty busy,
Share services with the high school when it comes to.
it's quite packed.
See one.
Yes,
We've been hitting on this.
I think you're going to choose some.
The 53.
Well, we're just going back to the idea whether that's a good deal or not.
5345?
Yeah, what's an annual sign inspection?
Where are we at now? Get closer.
It's usually sign up
So,
front.
yeah, it's sign up front.
Oh, okay.
What?
The
Outside?
sign,
The multi-million
yeah,
dollar
the
electronic sign.
informational
Outside,
sign.
We have an annual inspection on it,
Mhm.
and what does that provide us?
Just
Replacements and
Yeah,
The what?
yeah.
if anything, it needs to have work done to it, that's part of that agreement.
it's like a maintenance agreement.
Okay.
Oh.
Extended chairs, walls.
Costs like 30,000.
It'd be separate. It just struck me as, okay, never mind.
Yeah.
Oh, I must be tired.
35 emails a day from school.
It can't be that major an expense.
I mean.
It's not
well,
$3,000,
I was gonna say the line
Well,
is not
there's
that
also,
much.
you have
I
other
see.
things
Yeah.
here
So far
in
this
that.
year.
Ink replacement, I know.
What all, I mean,
1,600 last year.
what you have here for notes is the majority of the expenses that make up, you know, I tried to make sure I covered at least 80+% of what makes up
Don't worry
that budget.
about it, we're just being
line.
catty.
That's
I
just tacky.
If I put every little thing that was in each line, you would have 20
Volumes.
pages under each tab, so.
Any questions on technology?
Oh, 148.
What's this one?
The,
What did I miss here?
with that agreement, Steve,
have a
how often do we actually have a
$20,000
person here
increase
to actually
for advanced
review anytime we have
microsystems.
a, just on
Anytime we have a
call?
problem with it,
Replacing the
we have
wage
somebody
to
come out,
200.
not just the sign, but if we have a problem with the
Whatever,
computer,
whatever,
because it's operator's office.
It's reading wrong line.
No, just too much, not the sign, the sign's not too much of a factor, it was the idea of the subcontracting of our technical support.
Technology,
Yeah.
how
I-
often, they
I mean,
do
they only
it.
come basically when we ask, so there may be.
No,
yeah.
they're here on a routine basis for just update, maintenance stuff. And then they do a lot remotely from their facility when it comes to Trio updates and anything that's Microsoft
Yeah.
updates, they're constantly doing that. Just give you an example, for some bizarre reason, some of the email addresses, some of them were blocked and some weren't blocked. And police department couldn't get their email, and it's all over the place this week. And he just, from remote, he just fixes it.
I couldn't get mine today either.
It's been bizarre too. This is an odd week for them.
Mine, I don't even go
Big
there
moon.
weekends. It's
Must be the
so-
full, the big
It messes up
moon.
all the time.
What else does he do? If we have issues, like when we had the credit card stuff, he comes out and does any of that installation that we have and checks it, makes sure we're working with our printers. And so it is, and he's here sometimes once a week at least, and I'm kind of pressing him to be here a little bit more, because we buy hours in advance, because we get a better deal if we buy blocks of time. So we have a pretty good idea of what we need, and
So this dollar figure we're looking at isn't so much a year contract, it's a year's worth of block amount of hours that we use.
yes.
And we have to use it throughout the year, or, you know. If
We
were
can
to
carry
go-
those hours forward,
And if we were not, if we used more than that, then it would be over and beyond this,
Yeah.
for some reason.
yeah, and we stay pretty much within that. He's looking also at a new funding mechanism on a monthly basis versus blocks of time, unlimited time if you need him. So it's not going to be charged by the hour, so he's looking at a whole different funding mechanism, which he thinks will save us money. Here, so,
So on 5246, what's the Oxford Network for 2,000 and Time Warner for 2,500? What are those payments for?
Great Falls TV, we have to pay an annual fee to them, as well as Oxford Networks,
Yeah,
5260.
5246, the Oxford Network and Time Warner, I'm just wondering what we're paying them for. See,
Right here,
Right there.
for our
Yeah.
connections, some of our stuff not all, this building is on Oxford Network, other buildings are on Time Warner.
Okay, yeah.
The town website we have to pay for, plus we back up not only on-site, but we back up off-site. And Positina is another software that we use, I'm not sure. So it's a site, I think, but there's a fee. These are all internet hosting.
Yeah, I was just curious why we had two separate ones, but it's different buildings.
Yeah, different
They're
buildings.
not available in all spots, or,
Yeah.
okay, yeah.
I think Oxford Network
Really?
only runs down through 196.
Oxford Networks is not available everywhere.
I don't believe so.
They're not available everywhere,
Yeah.
but we'd like them. I wish they were. I won't say that too loud. We're very happy with them.
So what's the increase in 19% for computer equipment on 5405, bottom line there?
Just looking at replacing some outdated equipment.
Okay, do we have a plan for, that we have?
Yeah, we have a plan for replacement that the technology committee put in place, and we're regularly, the luxury that we don't have with John being gone is he was able to pirate parts from some of the computers that we had and fix other things. We can't do that
Yeah.
with him,
Yeah.
without him. So, okay, any questions on that? Okay, code enforcement's your next one, the 148. This is the first year that this department has been pulled out of the assessing. So when you look at the 2010 and some of the other budgets, you'll see a lot of zeros. This is, we have pulled that out, so it's a standalone department, so we can track expenses better.
Where's this?
So the percentages are kind of whacked.
148, yellow tab.
No, that's not, no, assessment.
145?
Oh, assessing, sorry. Back at the beginning.
Just looking at that, I know the figures are whacked a little bit. Are you still doing 1.75% wage increase?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't, 2010 was, it doesn't look quite that much from looking at the budget.
2010, yeah, it's zero.
No, I'm looking at
So-
last
He's
year's
looking at
figure.
Assessing.
2012 initial and then 2012 manager.
No, I'm
If
looking
you
at
look at
last
the deputy
year's.
assessing
You look
clerk
at the wrong
wage,
page.
No,
36.9,
where is it?
it's gone up a little bit, it looks like about 1.7%.
Is he looking at the wrong sheet?
Yeah, he's good. Is it the 37,440?
I was just comparing it to last year. That's probably not right.
37,440.
On the wages, 500. Oh, skipping assessing.
What's the
You're looking at the
question?
wrong thing.
They're comparing assessing to codes.
Oh, okay, I was in here.
No, no, I'm not. All I was doing
No,
was, because it was together, I was looking at the,
Between these two. I know.
sorry. Okay.
Questions on code enforcement? Dialogue on code enforcement? One of the things that's before the state legislature that may change this one budget is our governor has asked to do away with the state planning office. And one of the things that they have which provides our code enforcement people with their training, and it's usually at no cost. Now, the governor is recommending to take all the state planning office jobs, spread them throughout different departments throughout the state, and then having any training take place at the community colleges, which means, to me, it's going to cost us money. So that's something that hasn't been voted on, but that's something before we finish this may change things. Mike is currently up to date on all of his training, but down the road with some changes in the building codes and stuff, we may have to do something different, but right now it's status quo.
So it's be an increase over professional development, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, if it, I'm not sure what will happen. It's again, this state legislature hasn't changed anything yet. Questions? Answers?
So you're
Dialogue.
saying that the professional development line is the one that could change?
It could change, yeah.
India,
I don't
what kind
suspect.
of range it would be, you know, it'd be.
Well, it'll be the cost of a class, you know, undergraduate class.
Right, so 200.
Unless they have a special fee for
Right,
it.
so yeah, I mean, course cost over there, what, 300, 400 bucks?
Say, yeah,
Yeah.
300 or 400,
Yeah, so.
so, no,
But
not a huge,
huge,
not
but
maybe
it's-
10,000
it's an
or
extra,
something,
yeah.
right?
Why is there a difference between the $250
Yeah.
and the dues membership to the 150? Did we eliminate something in that? The initial request was 250. You put in 150.
for meeting and dues,
Yep.
I just
Sorry about that, sir.
Well, that's
think
just,
the cost was less. We
Thanks,
just
Okay.
had been budgeting that. and,
A little high.
just trying to take a
Is
nap on the
mileage
table.
realistic?
Mileage,
$1,000?
I think so. I mean, he's
2,000?
on the road quite often and doing inspections and things,
Or I
so.
wasn't asking that way. I mean, if it's gonna shoot me around the table, if you make me come right out and say, I mean, the price of gas is up, and I'm not
Yeah.
sure what the rate of reimbursement is.
Well,
It's
we,
changed still 51 cents, right?
Yeah,
I don't think it's changed since the gas prices have gone up.
Yeah, it
At least
hasn't
I haven't
changed yet.
had enough increase.
all those types of things that we're looking at may change before the budget's done, because we usually, like I think I've said this before, we usually get 50 cents less on per gallon than the price at the pumps. So, and right now, prices are around $3.50 a gallon, so it'll be, last year, I think we priced it just over $2.50 or $2.60, something like that.
Isn't that, that's based on taxes, right? Taxes you don't have to pay.
Right, taxes, yeah.
Right.
So, it's subject to change before we're done. All the departments that use gasoline and, or are concerned with what we have. We based it on $3 a gallon
Say
at
that's
this point in time. But,
Mike, you're starting to eat pencils.
if it goes up to 4, then we're gonna be,
Yeah, the
not
office
have enough
funds
money.
going crazy.
What's that?
If you extra 100 gallons for the council.
Probably public works, yeah.
Don't you use the public works truck?
Well, that's all changed too, so as of the 1st of July, there won't be anybody driving town vehicles home.
I
Except
agree
for the
with that.
fire
Can I-
chief.
Can I, sometime I'd like to discuss one of them with you
Yep.
on that. It's not, nothing major.
No,
That's
I'm
up to
sure.
you. That's up to you anyway.
It's across the board.
Yeah.
And I know which one you're talking about, and actually might change
Yeah,
with some reorganization,
yeah,
so,
because I really think safety is a big thing.
yeah. Well, we'll talk.
Just the liability of driving a town vehicle home. You're not on the clock,
It's
but
liability, but
you
it's
get
what I'm
nailed
thinking
in
about.
the town
The
vehicle, we're
vehicle
liable.
is set up for, in the wintertime, it's set up.
A little
for
differently.
Road conditions.
Yeah.
It tells the road conditions so we can get the crew out faster.
Yeah.
That's
That-
the safety.
Things may change in that department.
Yeah. That's the one that I was more interested
Yeah,
in.
and that's what, something I may change.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay? Any other questions? Anything that you've talked about, we talked about last week, you've had a chance to think about? You want to go back to?
I'm just curious, I wasn't here, and I wondered if there were any major concerns with any of those from last Thursday.
Basically things we couldn't change, you're doing anything about it.
Right, that's what I assumed with most of these.
The
but-
only one that we really had really any discussion on, I thought, was debt service. And that was, we talked about the bond, and what was in the bond, and why we were recommending the bond. Basically, because in your packets, you should have had a motorization schedule from the main bond bank, and it shows the interest rates that we expect we would pay, and just the advantage, you have buildings that you put off for many years. I mean, the MTM roof is continuing to leak. Keep fixing it, but you've got relatively new furnaces in the MTM building, and you're heating the outdoors if we don't finish the windows, which I think is important aesthetically as well as energy savings. That building specifically gets a tremendous amount of use. It's our fastest growing revenue source in our small department, so. And the bridge on the Fisher Road is, if we don't get funding for that this year, we're gonna block it off, and I'm gonna send everybody to you when they can't get home.
Thank you very
Quarter
much.
mile around the other way, so.
They just gotta go around, you know?
Big ramp, they could jump.
Yeah.
Yeah, really.
So,
It
that's a project that the DOT is really pushing us to do.
Right up to the right.
Public,
The other bridge that's on the Sabata side, which is like 500 feet down the road, has to be the same condition, isn't it?
yeah, it is. Yep,
So-
that's another one that needs to be
I
replaced.
mean, it's not even worth doing one without doing the other, because they're both the same way. I mean, are we actually working with our Sabata's friends to see if that,
We haven't done that, no.
just curious, I mean, that's,
There was one change just before the fishing game house. They put a culvert.
but that's not on Fisher Road, though.
No, that's,
I'm not talking, Fisher Road has double bridges.
yeah.
One's in Lisbon, one's in Sabatis, right?
Yeah.
I think.
Well, the only one we're responsible for is the Fisher Road.
No, that's in Lisbon.
Both bridges?
Yes. The line is up.
Yeah, because the fishing game is in.
You actually leave, you go on the corner there is not,
Right, there's a little.
exactly, you actually go through Bowdoin and Sabatis to get to the fishing game.
Yeah.
Back in Lisbon, yeah, you actually go through two other towns to get to the fishing game. Because if you have an accident on the corner, that's actually Bowdoin.
Yeah, 'cause that's
If
the
you go
post
down towards
office.
Weber's, that's Sabatis.
Yeah.
Then when you cross the other line, you're back in Lisbon.
Right.
So,
I just
I
didn't
mean,
realize.
I'll
that's
check it.
like-
We
Just
had,
curious.
we had two bridges that we got reports on from the DOT. The one that, the Fisher Road was the one that they were really pushing us to fix because
There is
they
two bridges
consider it
on Fisher
unsafe.
Would you know
We want
that?
to make sure we don't spend
Yeah,
$100,000
because
to fix it, and
you
they
can
close
see
the
that
right way,
on the
and the
map,
other one
right,
falls
ends.
apart.
Yep, it's Bowden, then you turn left.
I'll check on that.
Sabatis?
Yeah.
But Mike would know
You
that.
make that
Is it the
switch back.
second bridge ours? I guess is the question.
Isn't there two bridges right there close?
The one on Fisher Road is
Yeah.
ours.
But there's two bridges on Fisher Road, though. I'm pretty sure there's two bridges on Fisher
Yeah,
Road.
that's what I'm
Yeah.
not getting at.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong, maybe you're wet, but I'm
No, I
pretty
think he's
sure.
right.
I thought it was just that one.
I think there's two bridges. I didn't
Well,
think
maybe
either one of them was
It's
very
Right.
big.
really close.
It looks so much alike, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Visually, they're about the
They're
same.
really narrow.
Yeah,
And
and
you
they're
meet
in a
cover
dip,
car.
yeah.
Yeah. I don't know, I was just curious, because I
Yep.
remember Buttons had mentioned one
I'll
time
check
that he
it.
wanted to find out if Sabatos was gonna do their half, if we do it our half, but I weren't sure what happened, if it was a bridge or
I
not.
think that might be.
See, when Public Works was plow on Sabatis right there, because the button, it's all ours.
Because there's
It's
one
what?
that's
Yeah,
small.
but that's actually Bowden
Yeah, well,
takes the other half. That's
Yeah,
I'll double check that.
Yeah. Maybe not, I mean, I'm pretty sure that you go over two bridges going down Fisher Road. I
Yeah, you
didn't
do.
think either one of them were much
I've only,
looking
I've only
even.
passed over one, so that, I think.
One is really small, you might not even notice it, but there is a water source that goes under there. I don't know if it's the same brook or, and then the other one, you notice a bit more.
It might be just a culvert change.
Yeah.
Second one's a
Just to
little
go back to the debt service, the biggest controversy that I'm seeing, of course, as usual, is the revaluation. And I don't know how the whole council feels after what we've been through, but I hope they support it. But just to give you an example of what we discovered today, and Bill says every time he turns a stone over, he finds something new. He found today houses that were built in 1987. They went through the revaluation that you did in 1989. Nothing on that card has changed since then, and it rates the house as in excellent condition. But it's 20-plus years old, and nobody's been out to visit it since that time. So these are the kind of inequities that we're finding throughout our data, and it just doesn't make it fair and equitable for some people. In order to get our assessing office in line and get it on track so it is fair and equitable, I can't stress the importance of doing this. I'm not putting it off and not trying to stretch it out 4 years, because just by the time you get it done and in place, it'll be the 5th year, and then your data is already old. Because you should look at it every 10.
Don't we stand more of a risk for having more abatements without doing a reval?
Well, if people start
Because of the-
questioning, yeah, I mean,
It's like the one Dot found where the $220,000 house was taxed, but the 5 acres of ground it's
yeah, I mean,
it's not taxed
these
at
are
all.
things that you won't know until you do the reval, that where some of the data is not real good.
Downfall of the house you just mentioned, it could be one of two ways. That could have been in the last 30 years, it could have actually fallen apart to nothing and be
Worth nothing.
worth nothing, or it could actually have a new 4-bay garage
That's
with
right.
living space above it with,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, you don't know what that house is until you actually.
Yeah.
Right.
So I have asked Mr. Van Tynen if he would do a revaluation seminar sort of for the general public during our public hearing, just before the public hearing, and we'll get the message out there, so if people want to hear it and be there at the school, they'll come. And he can walk, I think he explains things extremely well, so everybody understands. And just the slide that we showed during our presentation, what I hope everybody remembers it, is that at 80% or less, all the tax rates were $20 and up. Anybody that had 100% of value were $14 and less. So that's the thing to keep in mind, that your tax rate drops. And-
But it still doesn't make a, if your house is worth that much more, it doesn't.
Yeah, if you have a house that's worth $1 million, it's worth $1 million.
Regardless of what tax rate is, you're still
Right.
paying the same if our expenditures stay the same.
If everything's, if it stays the
It's really
same.
driven by
Last year it was worth
expenses.
$1.3 million.
It's really driven by what we spend more than anything else. So, any other questions on areas we covered before?
So Gina, we're here, you want to go over it all real quick?
Yeah.
Nothing changed in elected officials, nothing changed in contingency. There's been changes in insurance, which we've all talked about before. Legal account, if we can quit having second opinions and quit having recalls and extra voting, we might be able to lower that. The retirement and social security accounts have dropped because of the employee layoffs that we're planning. Appeals board and planning board increased because we added wages for the recording secretaries to that. That was never in there, and it was coming out of everybody else's lines, and so we put $500 in each one of those. We reduced the street lights another 10,000, I think it was, anticipation that we're going to be taking out more lights. Otherwise, there's no other real changes. Community services and public services remained pretty much the same. General assistance stayed the same. Abatements, we started with, I think, 10,000, and health officer, there was no change.
We talked quite a bit about hydrant rentals. That's-
Yes.
If you
That's
want to,
not gonna go away.
that's not going to go away. I'm going to harp on that. There's savings to be had for both organizations, but
Back to the streetlights, I know that we had a great improvement, that's really good, but are we still working on getting LED lights or those?
we haven't gone that far yet.
We haven't?
No.
Okay, so
It's,
that's
we
not
talk
anything-
about it, but we haven't, I think we're going to try to get the lights down that we can, and then start again and get those taken care of if we can. And
Any
put-
complaints with what we've done so far, or?
We actually put one up down by Main Recycling, so, but we,
You didn't put one in their parking lot, did you?
not in their parking lot. no.
Outside the parking
Yeah,
lot?
we did.
You did?
Yep.
Can you put one outside my parking lot too? Can I put their
You
request
got
in?
one.
Yeah, but I pay for it now. I mean, if I knew the town would put it up for free.
Well, if you get one, I get one. I'll-
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Finance
Only for
Department,
everybody.
just so
You guys can
everybody's
have
on the
ours.
same page.
Which is exactly why
Finance
we
Department
Size or
has
second
seen a
amendment.
reduction in wages because of something we're doing with the school. We're looking at combining payroll, and so there was a reduction there. And tax collector, we were asking for a part-time person, so when people are on vacations and people are out sick, we have coverage. People have been backed up, and it's gotten
What was the number last week?
a little bit of that last week.
Yeah, I know that, but.
So those are the only things that we discussed at this point. Thoughts, questions? Well, my wife will think I'm a stranger coming home this early.
I have
I think a
a,
lot
I
of
better get
it-
my boyfriend.
I do want to
Out
know,
of
did
there.
you guys change
Good caller.
any of the timing of these meetings from our?
No,
original?
these are the same. The reason we don't have anything for March 24th is because there's a planning board meeting this week, Thursday. So that's one of the reasons I didn't plan that. And then I thought April 5th, or that Thursday of the 31st, it would give us an opportunity. You've gone through more than half the budget items. It'll give the council a chance to really have good budget discussions once we get to the 5th. And then that following Thursday, we'll go through some of the more difficult departments.
No, you just said the 31st, we are going to meet on the 31st? We're not.
You're not having a meeting.
What's the date on that Thursday, the one that you actually want to
Okay,
do?
yeah.
I forgot the date of that. Thursday, the
31st.
more interesting ones come up.
7th.
Instead of Tuesday.
Thursday, April 7th. Not gonna be here.
Excuse me.
I have two questions.
Well, I could move them up.
Additional on the 31st, Thursday.
I can take it from Washington if you want.
Yeah, we'll have you, your book and a phone.
Maybe we're not meeting on the Thursday after the 29th there, I don't know what the date.
Right, we're not
That's
gonna
the
make.
31st.
That might be
Yeah,
the
any reason for that?
No, just it's,
Just
do
to get it easy for
you wanna move up, you wanna move?
Let me double check that date though, just to make sure.
Okay.
I'll look at it.
Let me know.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll change it.
Don't push it to the following week, though.
Which week?
The 11th to the 15th.
Right.
Don't make any meetings that week.
I don't think I did. No meeting.
John?
Okay.
Get your son-in-law, Greg, I'm
I
there.
had to.
There you go.
Mexico.
If you can, for the April 5th meeting, it's, I don't know how, it's not going to be a real light meeting, but it would be nice if you guys, as counselors, would have open discussions and talk about your thoughts of what you've talked about so far, any recommendations. You'll see some, on the 29th, there'll be some cuts in personnel there. And the one on the 7th, there'll be some cuts in personnel there. So, food for thought.
Steve,
I think it's pretty hard. I mean, a lot of this has gone through. I mean, it's good to understand, but I mean, a lot of the discussion, I don't think we'll come until we get through the whole thing and then start
Yeah.
figuring out what the bottom.
I have two questions that are somewhat related to real life here. One of them is, I remember Roger talking about revenues and talking about the permits, or the car permits for the recycling center transfer station. Is there any thought about changing that, or potentially capturing,
More?
yeah, or at least,
Well, my idea.
He
was
actually
that-
wanted us to reduce it.
Well, no, I didn't.
No?
If we had gone the way I wanted to, we would have ended up with more because of the $1 per vehicle.
Per vehicle
fifth.
for a second.
and one of the
If you
suggestions I
were to
had was,
capture more second vehicles, right now he charges $5 for a second vehicle.
Yeah.
So, and
Well, I
we
had
said
in
fewer
mind-
cars probably get the sticker for the second vehicle.
There's a lot, the truth is, a lot of people in this town that have not only the second vehicle, they get the third vehicle,
You
the
do.
fourth vehicle, the fifth vehicle, and that costs $5 per.
well, my thought was they're not gonna do that, but
One now.
my thought was
I only have it on one, but I added up.
raise the fee to $15 and don't limit the vehicles, sticker on it, but don't
Just a
limit it.
family or per house.
Yeah,
Right.
and there, you're gonna capture probably at least as much, if not more, than you're capturing now.
Just keep in mind the presentation that you saw the first night, and where the revenues are, where we get our biggest bang, and where the expenses are.
I know it's minor, but
Yeah, if we're gonna make more dramatic cuts to lower the taxes, or to keep them flat, keep in mind that what we have proposed here adds 13 cents to the tax rate. But what the school,
But you said 75 cents.
no, it's
That's
75.
75,
That's with the school.
Current.
Yeah?
So their budget and their expenses are what really drive the tax rate.
Didn't they just say that they were,
62 cents.
since
They
the
were.
time you talked, theirs has come down?
They're
They get
constantly
expected-
working on theirs, trying to get it to a
Yeah,
0%
yeah.
tax rate.
It's gonna be, we're also thinking whatever cat comes from the state.
Well, and that's
Drive that.
what I was going to say too, is I'm
Because
very
I know, like, I
concerned
was
about
talking to
that.
Dale, and what they want really right now is probably not gonna be realistic of what's gonna get this. You know, he said that, look at it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, I know the revenue sharing, the committee has made recommendations on the revenue sharing to fund it with the current formula, but they're gonna fund it at 94 million versus 100 million, which puts us exactly where we are, 780,000 versus 1.16. If they had funded it at the full 100 million, we would have gotten more revenue sharing and been in a much better place, but that's not the case. So, and there's people in Augusta are saying that's the one that's gonna get passed. They're gonna fund less. And so we have to learn to live with what we have.
The second question I had was, what's it, if I can figure it, maybe it's Jessica's question. 1 mil is worth how many dollars,
465,000
based on today's?
valuation.
And the revaluation that we're talking about doing the
So
bond
3/4
for
of it
is
was
not
worth-
going to have any impact on us for what period of time again?
So that's what I'm looking at.
This year, this coming year, the impact will be about 15,000 because it's just interest for a short time. The following year, the 2012, 2013 budget, it will be approximately 104,000.
Cost for us, but there should be an increase in revenue. Some increase in revenue?
We hope so.
Okay.
From
New cars.
New cars, yes, new cars.
reval, we won't see that for 3 years.
Well, that's what I was
I
kind
mean,
of
that's
asking.
not a
yes.
1 or 2, that's a third year
Yeah.
implementation. I mean, first 2 years and the third year being implemented. So you're not gonna see any revenues, and you may even see a drop in revenues.
That's not
You don't know.
gonna increase revenues for the town.
No, but I mean, it
No.
may,
Taxation.
it's gonna
You can take
probably
it out.
shift revenues,
Yeah.
more so than it's gonna change it.
Because we're already above the 70% level,
But
so.
please know, I hesitate to say it because I want to use the wrong language, but I mean, there is some shift and we could expect to see some different things
Yeah,
happening.
you could. I mean, I definitely think as much as our residential hasn't been really evaluated properly, our commercial probably hasn't been either. You mean, so, and
But
we,
you also have all of the shift that Mr. Van Tynen had been talking about where we lose money in the tree growth and some of those other revenues where we could be getting more money.
We could be getting more.
That's what the 80% thing did for us, wasn't it?
Yep. But some of the programs are changing in the state too. I mean, not by this administration, but by past. So any new equipment that goes in, and this is what Bill said today, and correct me if I'm wrong, if somebody has a piece of equipment they take out of service because it's fully depreciated, and they replace it with a new piece of equipment this year at 125,000, we don't get the benefit of being able to tax that. So there's some things changing. So we want buildings. Buildings are the biggie. If we get big buildings in the parks and stuff like that, that's gonna help us. And
Like
jobs.
economic development to me.
Yeah, it sounds like it. So, there's
Crazy.
a lot of things we have to work on. Gone.
Funny, funny.
But,
We ought to get together.
if you have any questions, don't hesitate to call, before, next week. From there.
Who's doing the website, the town, like, departments and updates and all of that website?
Jody's doing some of it.
Really, they're really improving on a lot
Yes.
of things. I went on today, I'd gone on for a really long time, and
Twyla's doing some too. I mean,
Yeah,
I think
I think
it's,
you should,
The department heads are responsible for the individual pages that are theirs. But Jody and Ryan really encompass the website as a whole and.
like, the history was kind of fun for me, the fire department and the police
Yeah.
department, and, because I remember some of those things, that Bud Junkins, you
I
must
remember
remember.
Bob.
I remember him.
And that's an economic
What are you
development
laughing
fund, too.
I wasn't even in Lisbon then, but I remember
Yeah, Bud
hearing my
Junkins, that was
father-in-law
just
and David
like-
talk about Junkins.
He used to tell the story about when he was a police chief and all that stuff.
First time I ever got pinched was by him, and I was
And if you
8
haven't
years
seen,
old
I
on a bicycle.
think it was Monday or Sunday's
Yep, took me
paper,
home to my father, I
Chief
didn't
Brooke
like
put a
that too
really,
well.
he was a
but
guest
yes, I was.
Worst
writer,
punishment you can get.
and he talked
Be
about
worse when I take you now.
Do you want to go dig that out? Yeah, go ahead.
I met him
Although,
at
when you're
Balmer's
that
Adult
age, there's
Daycare
nothing more
Center.
fearful than your dad.
I met him at Balmer's Adult Daycare Center,
Parents who are
I come down, I
going
somebody on the
to
hill.
the barber shop.
Oh, yeah.
take care of children.
I see.
Insult to injury.